everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're gonna start working on the legs, putting the joints on. We've got knee joints and hip joints, and eventually we'll have ankle joints, but that's not for this video because we have to make the feet first. So this will be several different parts, but I wanted to just sort of get the legs completely done in terms of that. So I'm gonna pull out the balls that I've already made for the hips and the knees, and we'll start working on that. There's quite a bit of engineering going on with this part, so I think if you just keep in mind that for this doll you want to be symmetrical, you want to have both sides the same, and you want to have the parts fit together well, otherwise the joints aren't going to work properly and it's going to look weird because you'll have one leg different than another. So starting out, I just was looking at how the ball was fitting in the leg, and you have to just keep going back and doing this as you make small adjustments. You don't want to go too big at one time, but making some small adjustments, carving out or sanding, and then I just decided I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some styrofoam here, which is so satisfying. I just love pulling the styrofoam out. And also keeping in mind that as you do this, you're going to be cutting the leg in half, so you can remove styrofoam from the middle part of the leg at that point, but to get to the inner part of the leg to carve the ankles and the top of the thigh, you have to pull out some of the styrofoam initially on either end. And then you're just going to do some sanding and looking and making sure you've got it carved out well so that a ball will fit in there. Always look at each leg together to make sure you've got it the same height and the same shape. So it looks like it's coming along. You can do a little bit of repair work. Don't despair if the top of your leg opening is not exactly round, as mine were not. That's fine. You're going to be putting clay in there to put the ball in, so you'll be able to do a little bit of repair and making sure that any mistakes you've made are covered up like I did. So you've also got to make sure that the ball you're putting in the leg fits into the hip joint. So keep looking back and forth at that. Here I'm taking out the styrofoam of the other leg that I haven't worked on that much, and then we'll do the same thing. We're going to be carving out the opening of the thigh and the opening of the ankle, just making sure we've got that as thin as possible, because we are going to put, like I said, we're going to put clay in there, so even that little chip you see on the side, we'll be able to repair that, so don't despair. That's fine. We'll be adding a little clay. Now I'm just looking to make sure the legs are the same height. If they're not, you can always sand off a little bit or carve off if it's a whole lot. Mostly on my legs, I noticed that the opening is more oval, so I have some room at the front and back of the opening, so that's fine. I'll just fill that in with clay, and then we'll sand it down to where it looks smooth. Tricky, right? But something to keep in mind if you do make another doll after this, that you're going to be putting balls in these holes, so they do need to be round to be able to work as a joint. So that's just something, many things I've learned. What can I say? Many things I've learned. The other thing is that, making a hand-rolled ball is not easy to make it exactly round, so, you'll have to spend some time sanding. I did notice one of the balls is slightly smaller than the other and also has some fairly deep gouges in it. So I'm just going to correct both of those by putting a thin piece of clay over that area, so that'll fill in the ridges and also make the ball a little bit bigger. Another little repair tip there. So just get it as smooth as you can. You can roll it in your hands and smooth it with a tool or whatever. That will have to dry overnight before you mess with it, though. Don't think you can mess with these things after a couple hours. Even though they look dry, underneath they are not. And if you start trying to sand it, it'll just pull the clay right off. So we're going to go back to our ball that is dry and pretty much ready, and it's now time to open that up and pull the guts out, because that has a styrofoam ball in it. All of this has to be hollow, legs, joints, everything, because we're going to be running elastic string through the whole body, legs, arms, neck, everything. So the hole will be on the bottom of the ball. That'll go into the top of the thigh. When we attach it to the body, there will be a sort of a slashed opening to allow the elastic string to move through it as you flex the joint. So just looking at this and seeing how it's going to look, if you go back to the book, you can see the top part has that slash opening, but the bottom part is fixed to the thigh, so it doesn't have to move. So then we'll just have a round hole opening, and then you dig out all the styrofoam, and then you're pretty much ready to add it. But keeping in mind that we got to cut open the knee and put and get the styrofoam out. I didn't want to put the ball in until after I've cut it. So we're going to cut the knee. You have to cut straight through, and then also the two angles on the back, because that joint has to be able to move also, and the angles will allow that after you put a ball in it. So making sure my legs are the same again. Again, symmetry is king here. Just take my word for it. If you don't, it's going to mess up the doll. It'll look like a monster doll, a lopsided doll. So now the part is to mark where we want to put the initial cut through the center of the knee. And also we want to look at that on the opposing leg, because we want to make sure we get the joints at the same level. So you get the legs side by side, make sure they're matched up, and then I even used a straight edge because I was afraid even if I eyeballed it, I would get it in the wrong place. But see, it's easy to just get a ruler, or I'm using this whole template to make sure that you get the marks straight across. You can also use the holes of the whole template to make sure that your balls are the same size. And it also helps to show where there's any irregularities that you need to sand off. Some people say you could push the ball through there when it's wet to make it rounder and more symmetrical. I couldn't do that. It just misshaped the ball, so I just rolled it in my hands. So you're just going to make the marks on both knees, and then we're going to use our coping saw again that we used when we cut the arms off. That seems to work best to make a thin cut, and as long as the blade is nice and sharp, it tends to go through the clay pretty easily. You do have to make sure that as you go through it, that you go all the way through with the saw. Otherwise, if you have that little bit left and you pull it apart, you're gonna have a very uneven edge on that side. So I'm putting it right on the edge of the table or that graph book, and trying to saw all the way through to the bottom to make sure it's a nice clean cut all the way through. If you have to, you could always turn it, and I almost panicked there because I thought I broke it. But yeah, it works well, the coping saw. I don't know what saw he used. It just in the book says saw, so I tried looking at the picture and it just looks like a butter knife or something. So anyway, at this point you have the two sides open. You can dig out the rest of the styrofoam, and we're gonna dig out the joints that we could use for the knee. You want to get two that are fairly the same size. So I'm just looking now to see what the right size will be, keeping in mind you're going to be putting some clay around this to put in the bottom part so that you attach it. The top part will have the slash opening like the top of the thigh. So find two that are fairly similar and that look like they will fit into the leg of both the top and the bottom. And then it's just a process of trimming, smoothing, cutting out, making sure the joint moves. This leg also I cut apparently at a bad angle. The knee joint is not straight across, it's like angled to one side. I can fix that a little bit. I could sand off the part that is coming down and then add clay to the bottom part and build it up. And these are little tweaks that you can do because you can always add clay and take away clay, if something's not working right. But basically, the other leg looked pretty good. So at this point, I'm ready to do the angle cut that angles to the back of the knee, and this will allow the joint to move. This was kind of hard because I had to hold it to try to get the two sides to stay together, because it's easy at this point to get the leg twisted so that the top and the bottom parts aren't matched up properly. So it's really important that you make sure that you have them matched up in terms of the carving of the sculpting part. Otherwise, once you cut this and you try to put the joint in and it comes together, the front part won't look right because it won't match. So you're just going to cut at about it's almost like a 30-degree angle, I would say, maybe a little bit, maybe a little more, maybe 40. And this will enable the leg to bend at the knee. Now, if you want to make an error here, I would say err on the side of not cutting enough, because you can always sand off a little bit more. So be conservative, cut off maybe 30 degree angle, 25 degree, whatever you're comfortable with eyeballing it. And then once you get it cut, you can, flex it, see if it works, see if it's deep enough, and make some sanding. So at this point, you want to make sure you're cutting through both sides evenly, and it cut really, really well. So that part was pretty simple. This clay, although it's so light, it's actually pretty strong even at these thin places, so it doesn't crumble. Like, I almost was afraid, I'm going to start cutting this and it's going to crumble. But it didn't. Even the thin parts, it cut pretty well. So now you can put it together and try, flexing it and see if that's going to work, if that's the right angle or not. It looks actually pretty good. So that front part is where the ball will be. So now we want to put the ball in and see how that works. Now for this one, it was initially where I needed to do a little trimming on the inside of the leg to make sure that the ball fit both areas properly. But that's basically what this whole doll is about. You look at it, you trim it, you sand it, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you go back and either sand more or add clay. So at this point now, with the leg open, we're ready to add the ball to the top of the thigh, and basically just add some water to the inside of the thigh once you have the ball as round as you can get it, and add a little water to the ball. Get the water out of the inside of the ball though. And then you're just going to take a strip of clay, roll out some clay, and put it around. I put it around the inside of the leg, and it's probably best to roll it out because you want to have some thickness. You're going to push the ball down on it, and then that will thin it out. So you can start out with it a little bit thicker, and also making sure you have a little bit of it sticking up above the lip of the clay of the thigh that's dry, because when you push it down, you want to have clay that sort of sticks up and is like, like how you put silicone molding in tiles, and then you can smooth it out. Now, like I said, the leg itself is a little bit too open in the front and back part, So if you need to, you can add a little strip of clay in that gap and smooth it out, and then you won't be able to notice any difference. And that's what I did for both legs, because the gap was a little bit too much in the front and back, but the sides it seemed to fit perfectly. So this is at this point, put aside that top part to dry. We're going to kind of do the same process with the knee joint and put the clay in there in the bottom part. So just making sure that we have this opened up properly, and it's going to have enough room to put clay in with the sides ball that we need. And then just like with the hip joint ball, we're going to open up a hole in the bottom of the knee joint ball and take out the styrofoam ball that's in the center. These were those little multicolored styrofoam balls, if you remember I showed you in the previous video. So I did make several different sizes, and it was easy to tell once I started cutting it if it was like the blue or the orange or whatever ball. So that was kind of a cool side effect of having the color balls. I knew which size it was. So again, we're just wetting the interior of the leg at the knee and wetting the outside of the ball. This will make the clay glue that we're putting in there stick to it better. And that makes it stronger too when you have that wetness with the dry clay. So again, we're making a little round tube, well not tube, but a round molded piece of clay, and we're just sticking it on the inside of that knee joint, making sure there's a little bit sticking up, and then just press the ball down with that hole going downward, the open hole going downward. And now you can take your tool and smooth out. You want to make sure that top of the knee joint is smooth, because that's what the upper leg will fit onto. You can even mesh the upper leg down on it if you needed to, sort of like a mold, to make sure you get it the right shape, or if you have a little crack or something, and that will take care of it. Lots of ways you can do repairs. So let's look at this doll. I just want to show you, you want to make sure you have room here for a 90-degree angle as much as possible with both the knee and the hip. We're not going to worry about the feet right now, but the knee and the hip, you want to be able to bend at about 90 degrees with the joint. Now the front part will be flush, and the back part you'll see the opening of the knees, and the front part of the thigh you'll see the opening. So now we've got everything dried. It's been drying over a couple nights. Now we're just making sure that when the knees together that it looks like it fits well, and also as it flexes that we can get to as close to 90 degrees as possible. If you can't, you can always do a little sanding or trimming right here. This actually looks like I do need to do a little bit because it's not quite at a 90-degree angle. And also you want to make sure you keep your two parts of the leg together. You don't want to mix those up because they are similar and you can get them mixed up. So make sure when you're laying them down that you're keeping the upper and the lower part of the leg for the same leg together. I made that mistake and really had to suffer to try to figure out which leg went with which two parts went together for a while, but finally got it figured out. And now just basically we're fine-tuning, making sure our joints work properly. So we've got to look at the hip also, and just like with the knee, I felt that especially on this right side of the body, I was not getting anywhere close to a 90-degree angle. So I was going to have to cut a little bit more up here into the body to allow that joint to flex. So I'm also going to look at the left side of the body. That one seems a little bit better, so not so much worried about that one as I am the other side. So just take a minute and carve that out a little bit more. And once you do, you can smooth it out with that sponge sanding block is kind of the best way to do it. Just put that in there and twist it, and that sands it pretty well. So now I notice there's a crack where I had added clay at one point, and I don't want to have any cracks that can flake off because that will leave a huge piece open. So I'm gonna try to repair this right now before we go any further. So I'm just spraying down some water and using a fairly stiff brush to get in there and get that really wet. And then I'm putting clay over that and smoothing it out so I don't have a crack anymore. This was just hard to see initially when I first added the clay, so now that I've carved a little bit and it's open, I was able to see it. So there's little repairs that you need to do along the way. You don't want to have any cracks like that could split open later. That will make your doll fall apart, or at least leave an ugly gap. So now just sanding away at the final touches here, smoothing out any places where I added clay, making sure my joints work. If not, I can always do a little more carving, do a little more sanding, and basically thinks the legs actually came together pretty well. I'm even more hopeful now. As this project goes along, my fears are somewhat receding that it's going to be a big mess, but we'll see. We still have lots to do, especially the face. That's always going to be the hardest part, getting that to look right. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just going to take some time now to look at the two legs side by side, making sure still they look fairly symmetrical and even, same height, same, knees at the same, opening at the same place, that sort of thing. Always keep looking back and forth. That's the only way to solve this problem early instead of waiting till the end when it wouldn't be able to be fixed. So, hope you enjoyed this. We'll be moving on next to making some hands and feet to attach to the legs and the arms. So I hope you'll stay tuned and subscribe so you won't miss anything. Thanks for watching, and bye.